What we did was we created a component composition folder to start building our application. And instead of using create React app, we started with an npm init-y that created a package JSON file for us. Then we manually typed in npm I with those modules. Again, React is the core React library. React DOM is used to render our whole React application. That's React DOM.render. That's where we mount it to a root. We have React scripts, which is all of the helpful things we need. This includes other tools that are important. In the future, we'll talk about Webpack. This is built into Webpack. We've got React Router DOM. React Router DOM is used to allow for routing. And then finally, we have Node Sass. And Node Sass is going to be something that we will use for styling our application. Cool? All right, so that's where we're at. So now we can build the scaffold of our app. And there's a couple areas of this. Actually, no, we can't. Before we build the scaffold, here's what we should do. Just to get it done, we could do it later. I think it's progressively, it makes sense. Let's go into our package JSON file, and let's update these scripts here. Because again, when you do create React app, you're going to get something here that allows you to do a start and a build. Today, all I necessarily care about, just to get you thinking about it before we do anything, I care about start and I care about build, right? And even that I don't necessarily care about because we're building, we're just building this in development land. However, if we wanted to deploy this application, which you will need to do for your assignment, right? You're gonna have to have this. So it's just React scripts start, and then we're gonna do the next one, which is React scripts build. That's it, right? Those are the two things that we need, and as you can see here under our dependencies, we have React scripts, which allows us to run this. And again, what's happening, I think it's super important that you can describe this. Somebody might ask you about this. React scripts start isn't just saying Node.js or Node start. Like, it's not saying run this index file. What it is doing is it is spinning up a server. I'm willing to bet it's an Express server. We should look at that later. I'm sure it probably is, right? Builds up some sort of server, puts that server up on 3000, then builds the whole application, which it actually runs something like npm run build, right? Then serves all of that up here. And then while you're developing, it hot reloads. So hot reloading is like when I save, reload my browser. When I save, reload my browser. That's called hot reloading. Yep. So it does that for you, right? All of that is happening because there is a file under the surface called Webpack. Webpack is what handles the inclusion of like CSS files, right? So we can import CSS files and SCSS files. Webpack is doing that. I want you to know that because we used to not have React scripts and we used to make all this from scratch because we had to, right? And what we had to do was build Webpack files. We're going to be building Webpack files in the future though because you need to know what those things are, okay? All right, so we'll save this. Right, now we're going to jump back out of this real quick. We're going to jump in here and we're going to build the scaffold of our app. What are the two folders that we must have? Right, so we're going to make dir public and we're going to make dir source. Let's go into public real quick. What goes in here? Touch index.html. And in this file, what should generally be in there? Div with an ID of root or some element with an ID of root, right? Then we're going to go into source, and again, we're going to start to componentize things today. We're still going to work with some flat layers, and then we're going to make it even better, right? So let's start with this. So we're going to say, what's our entry file? Oh yeah, good call. What is our entry file called? So let's touch an index.js, right? We're going to have some sort of base style sheet, okay? So we're going to touch a styles.scss. Now, notice that styles.scss does not have that underscore convention because it's going to be the main style sheet where we import everything into. Cool? I'm going to start to really get into that. Today may or may not happen. It depends on timing. But in the relative future, I'm serious. Like, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about like how you have a core file, how everything else gets imported into it so that you can start to break up your CSS in a really clean formatted way. I've got a really good system for that that will work for Sass or CSS, and it's a good thing to start working with now, okay? All right, so boom, that's what goes in the main area. That means that app.js was something that we had before, right? Remember how we had app and main? So we had a main one, then we had an app, and we took app and stuck it in main, right? We might do something like that today too. However, those things should live where now? That's components. Oh, good call. So what I'm saying here is index is the entry point, which is just build the whole app, right? Everything else, even app, is a component. App is a global component. Index is build these things. Cool? Following so far? Okay, so now we'll go into components, and inside of our components directory, we need to set up a couple of components. So let's go into components, and here's how we're going to do this. We're going to start with some basic flat level components. So let's touch app.js. Okay, and we'll talk about bucketing them in just a minute. We're gonna do let's do a header.js, a footer.js, so we can put them all together. Let's do a main.js. We'll even do like a homepage.js, and we're gonna do that because we're gonna start to deal with routing. Now that's not bucketing them in terms of a subdirectory. So when I say subdirectory, I mean we could have, right, app. Great, cool. We could have components app.js, okay, and app. Exactly what I'm looking for. App.scss. Actually, this is missing something. We need that little underscore because it's a partial. Okay. You'll start to get more and more into that in the future. Like I said, we'll spend time with it. Then you would have footer with the same, right? Blah blah. Then you would have header with the same, and blah blah. Does that make sense? Yeah. While following that. So to get you thinking about that, what we're going to build today, in addition to the things that we have built so far, we're going to build out a couple of different types of components. All right. I'm going to build just not the internals, but the directory, so you know what's going on. Okay. We're going to start to bucket two things. One called if. That's going to be really interesting, and you'll find out the purpose of that soon. Okay. One called list. That is going to be a list of things. So we'll have a list of items. Does that make sense? A UL is the list. Items inside of that will exist. Follow? Okay. Then we're going to do a modal. Who knows what a modal is? What's a modal? Everybody knows what it is. You just don't know the name of it. Everybody in this room knows what it is. Here. Nope. What? Say that again? Nope. Modal is this. Show thing. Right, here you go. Quick view. Quick view. Like when you're looking at a product on a category page and you click quick view and a little pop-up shows up, that pop-up is called a modal, right? A pop-up is a thing built into your browser. So a pop-up is an actual thing. You can actually make a pop-up, which is a browser-built thing similar to like an alert box. However, when you go to a website and you have a modal window, which is a framed view, and the background is grayed out, that's called a modal. You all know what I'm talking about here? Okay.
When you visit websites.
Everybody knows what this is. Every single person. If you don't, I'll show you soon. No, it's not. It's the first time you've heard the word. It's like the millionth time you've seen it, though. You've seen this. I'll have to find one in a minute to show you. Here's an example. Sometimes when you go to a website, have you ever been to a website where, like, as soon as you load the page, it says sign up for our newsletter, and that's like front and center in the screen, and the background is grayed out. You sign up for the newsletter, then it lets you into the page. Yeah. That thing that pop-up is a modal. A modal is a pop-up window. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Like 3D touch?
Say that again.
Like iPhone's 3D touch? You get a list and then...
Yeah. Like when you click on something, you get like a little thing that pops up. Kind of. Modal windows are just pop-up windows, but a pop-up is a reserved word. Does that make sense? Pop-up is built into the language. Modal means pop-up window. That's all it is. You will all know what this is when you see it, I promise. We may not style it today because it takes some time to style it, but we're going to at least build one of those so that you can have an idea of how they hook together. Okay? We're going to be using something called props.children today. Props.children is a reserved word. And what that means is that when you use this.props.children, that means that anything inside of this component that you nest in terms of HTML or JSX, it shows up as a child part of that component. And we'll start to talk about that today in a minute as well. So we have built the scaffold of our app. We're going to go into those buckets in a bit. So we're going to end up going in here. So just to give you an idea of what if is going to be, and it's hard to explain this until we get there, but I wanna frame the whole structure first. If is going to be like a conditional. So like if this thing is true, show this, else show this, right? And that's going to exist inside of our JSX. Follow what I'm saying? Like we'll have an if component that says like if logged in, show user. That's not what we're doing here, but I'm trying to get you thinking about it. Else show something else. Okay? The reason we create this thing is because we use. Say it again. Nope. We use this specifically because ternary operators, right? This. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about, right? Is used everywhere in React, and when you start throwing big chunks inside of a like a piece of JSX with ternaries everywhere, it's really hard to read. Like it's super hard to read. So what we're going to do is we're going to make an if component that basically says if show this component, otherwise show that component. Does that make sense in terms of ternary piece? We're going to do what a ternary does, but we're going to make it cleaner, we're going to make it more efficient, and then we're not going to have code that's like, that looks awful to read. And I'm telling you, I know this from experience, we used to do that and nobody could read the code because the code was just like colon, question, colon mark, another thing, colon, and it becomes unreadable. So why not make a component out of that so that we can make it readable? Does that make sense? Okay, so it's 10 o'clock. You have, nice, right on the dot. I'm going to give you a total of 10 minutes, take a 10-minute break, come back.